Is my fifth medical device company. All five have been in San Antonio. The first four were in orthopedics, sports medicine, ear, nose, throat, ENT, and then vascular access. And when my last company was sold in May of 2023, I was trying to figure out what's next. And lo and behold, Freya had just gotten a phase one NSF grant. And it happens to be that the technical experts, one of them is my son. He did his PhD work in this area at the University of Utah. So he had already utilized a portion of our device in 1,400 women in a big motherhood and pelvic health study there. And what they learned is they measured intra-abdominal pressure in 1,400 women in their last trimester and 1 year postpartum. And what they learned is that if you have too much pressure on your pelvic floor, you prohibit that pelvic floor from healing. If you don't have enough, it doesn't stimulate, enough. So I use an analogy: if you play soccer, you tear your calf muscle. If you don't give it the right stimuli to heal, it won't heal properly. Same concept with the pelvic floor. And so they received a phase one NSF grant to kind of fund the company. He'd been trying to get a grant for 4 years, and
wow,
it was a couple of male co-founders. They thought, well, it's a women's health company, we should probably have some females involved, and so I joined.
Wow.
Yeah.
So all these are 5 medical device startups.
Yes.
Tell me why medical device from your perspective. I guess that's interesting.
I guess I'm a biomedical engineer by training.
Okay.
I got to San Antonio because I couldn't find a job in Corpus Christi where my husband was working at Hexcelanese, a chemical company. So for 2 years, I commuted back and forth, and I did a postdoc in orthopedic biomechanics. And some of the faculty at UT Health had spun out a company that was making like a resorbable scaffold, like a sponge for the surface of the knee to help that cartilage heal. And so I just got started in the medical device space and did that company for 12 years. Got acquired, thought, oh, I'll go work at a big public, company, and I'll have all this R&D money and I can do all this exciting work, and just wasn't good fit for the large company bureaucracy and infrastructure. I'm just more of a, hey, let's roll up our sleeves and get it done, not have a meeting to make a decision. So I guess it's just taking the concept for medical devices of, you take an idea, how do you test it, how do you validate it, how do you get FDA clearance, how do you get reimbursement, is the same regardless of what discipline you're in. And so I think it is unique for me to have gone from different industries, because then you always have to learn more about that clinical problem. But the idea of going through all those phases is the same regardless of what your product is.
But there's also a business side, a strategic side you must be bringing, right? Because there are a lot of startups that do have great ideas.
Yeah.
But if the strategic side isn't set up, if the team isn't set up properly, then there's a high probability of failure. And we see that a lot in the biospace and the med tech space compared to the tech space.
Yeah.
So what is Gabi doing that is maybe different, or how are you strategically looking at these?
So I'm not going to take credit that this is Gabi doing it, because my first 3 companies had the same leadership team, the same investors, and I think I learned a lot from that group, and they were the ones that were had the strategy, and I learned on how to execute. For my last company, it was my first time being CEO. I definitely went through lots of ups and downs. We ended up having to be a de novo, had to apply for a new reimbursement code, like all the challenges you could face, but we were able to persevere and then get acquired. So I think the success is just never giving up. And when you meet an obstacle, you just have to figure out how to overcome it and rely on your network or your mentors to get through some of that. It isn't always, peaches and cream. I can tell you some war stories, but some of them I probably can't say publicly, but I've been through a lot, and it's made me focus on, surrounding myself with honest, hardworking people who want to bring products to market
Sure.
that can help a lot of patients.
Sure. So next question. Let's talk about Velocity and women's health.
Yeah.
Because earlier you mentioned you're very passionate about, well, it's necessary, right? There's the history in regarding health and women's health specifically is very, very poor. It was almost non-existent, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the clinical trials weren't even done on women. And now I'm finding out.
Do you know what year?
No,
women
I don't.
were, okay.
No, tell me.
1993, when women were required to be part of clinical trials.
Wow.
Do you think any drug, any product that was developed before then was likely only tested in men? So women get a dosage that's equivalent to small men.
Yeah.
And we know now, we're learning that women respond differently to stroke, to heart attack, and all of those things.
Even the painkillers, I'm finding out.
And another stat question. Do you know what percentage of R&D funding goes to women's health?
No, I don't.
8%. Yeah.
Still today.
That's a recent statistic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So I think we are moving the needle, and I think we are getting more funding and studying. But it takes time to increase that allocation, and also, learn more about how women respond to some of those things. Wow. And then, we already shared some stuff earlier today, but then on the business side of things, it's also harder for women to raise money, even though female-led companies are more successful and have more efficient at getting companies acquired. And also actually have better business outcomes. There's statistics on that. However, they also receive less funding. And so what I've seen, what I'm excited about is, over the last 5 or 10 years, there's more diversity in the venture capital representation. So, you aren't going in as a female CEO pitching a women's health company to a room full of men.
Sure.
And so I think things are changing there, but it's going to take time to really get it to the point of where it's equally dispersed or representative of our population, right?
Yeah. No, that 8% that you just mentioned is giving me the motivation, because we're onboarding VCs now, 2 to 3 a week, and I'm going to switch our focus to make sure we're finding a lot of. We did bring in one that's focused on women's health, or at least 50% of what they're doing is focused on women's health. What do you think Velocity can do regarding this initiative? This is everything you mentioned regarding women's health and the statistics, it's a great initiative to go after.
Yeah.
What are some thoughts that you think Velocity can do to help?
Well, one thing, certainly Velocity focuses on military medicine, but and so the AIM conference is a internationally recognized conference. So I think getting more people to come to San Antonio, see what's being built here, see what's being done here is huge. Velocity also hosts CEO roundtables, and we just started a second one.
Sure.
And I think having a network of people that you can reach out to when you do have a challenge as a CEO, because I tell people it's the loneliest job ever, because you always have to be a cheerleader to your team.
Yeah.
But and then you always have to be optimistic with your board. And so it's hard sometimes just to let your guard down and be able to openly say, okay, this is what's happening, what should I do? And so having those kinds of colleagues for support is critical. So Velocity has 2 CEO roundtables. I'm honored to join as an entrepreneur in residence to meet with companies who have challenges, and I could provide some advice. And I think those kinds of things help build the ecosystem. We need to get more funding, the things you're working on, right? But there's a benefit to doing business in San Antonio, which is we have amazing, research institutions. With a merger of UTSA and UT Health, we now have the 3rd largest university in Texas. So hopefully with some of that, more funding will come to fund the companies and the ideas that are being, started here in our city.
Wow. So here's a little bit more difficult question. Maybe not. So what do you think is the challenge women are having that are not in the innovation space, in the life science, right? So I don't know, you're going to have to correct me here, but from my perspective, women either aren't exposed enough to the tech or the life science as entrepreneurs, or one of my partners out of TMC mentioned, even when they're exposed, they don't always feel that this is something they can do. What is your experience? What are your thoughts? What would you say to women out there in high school and college that maybe they would be the next innovator on women's health, but have no idea, right?
Yeah, I think role models is a big thing.
Okay.
And I'll give you, example. I grew up, my dad's an engineer, and growing up, I love math and science, so I was thought about architecture, engineering, and he influenced me to become an engineer. But honestly, I didn't even know any female engineers. The only engineers I had met were men, right? And so, and funny story, little sidetrack, but when I used to carpool my daughter and her friends to and from soccer, I'd always say, so what are your favorite subjects? And anytime somebody said math or science, I would say, have you thought about engineering? And my daughter would go, Mom, stop, like quit. But I felt like if they couldn't see somebody that's female, that's an engineer, they couldn't envision themselves. So I think being role models, I think just, showing that you can be CEO. It's not easy.
Sure.
But there's help out there. And sponsoring or mentoring people is, I think, what I've learned over the years are the biggest factors that can really help elevate women and, giving them the confidence to say, look, in 10 years or 15 years, learn as much as you can, and you could be CEO.
Sure. No, that's good. That's something I hope to see Velocity also take on as a group of us, 10 of us or so, went into a Montessori school in Houston.
Yeah.
And it was first, second, and third grade. And they all had their projects, their entrepreneurship projects. And I went to the guy and I said, some of these are as good as adults. And he goes, yes, I know. We're going to collect them, mark the ones you think. And he's going to reach out to the parents and say, listen, the way they displayed their solution and the problem was just amazing. It was on point. And so just last week I had a meeting with someone in Honduras, and she has started one.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to help provide some entrepreneurship stuff and help her feed it, because she's only doing I think it's 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, but she's just got recent approval to go up to 12-year-olds.
I mean, we stumbled on it in Corpus Christi, where we had to find, care for our 2-year-old son, and that happened to be a good program. But what I loved about it is the hands-on and being able to teach, math and spatial concepts through different hands-on materials. The ability to advance at your own pace. So if they could master a task, they can move on to the next one.
Okay.
And then also the ability for them to teach youngers, because that teaching reinforces the Montessori.
Wow.
So for me, I think for both my children, and I have my son is 34, my daughter's going to be 30 this year. Son is a PhD chemical engineer and co-founder of the company. But I think for them, it instilled this love of learning, and it taught them skills to learn on their own and at their own pace. Yeah. You know, Luz Cristal, she, I think they have a house here in San Antonio, but they mostly live in Austin. Her husband was one of the Rackspace, co-founders. But long story short, she is also an engineer, and she has a program to kind of encourage women about going into like entrepreneurship and science and math. I'll look up her info because it might be interesting for you to talk to her too.
It would be. It would be. I think entrepreneurship is that mindset. I think is much different than the corporate. And I know some of the struggles I have seen in ecosystems working together and people have been learning how to have that entrepreneurship or the startup mindset has been critical. If they don't, they try to work things as if they're in corporate. So that's what I'm trying to do also, is just help people understand to think a little bit more outside the box. Things have to flow a little bit differently. You do have to have a lot of some sort of structure and goals in mind, but I think the journey is a whole lot different. Yeah.
It's funny because you find these families where everybody's an entrepreneur, and not sure I have anybody like that in my family, so I don't know what influenced me. I just know my parents, allowed me to do all kinds of hobbies and different things, and I was like 10 years old and they bought me a little kiln and let me enamel stuff by myself in the basement. So, it's stuff like that that probably just inspires you. I don't know.
I get, so my dad he just passed last year, but he was the first Nigerian civil engineer to be self-employed after independence in 1960.
Wow.
Then my mom she's still alive. Then my older brother is, and then I am. But I started at 50. I'm 61 now, but I started at 50 years old. And my wife said, you better do it before you regret it. And so that's what...
Being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Because it was easier for me to be safe.
I'd be interested. We've used strength finders in some of my past companies to understand what inspires different people, what motivates them. And so you can also know how to talk and interact with them. And I bet you that a lot of entrepreneurs are learner, achiever, kind of that mentality. I don't know if you ever did Strength Finder and what your strengths were.
I probably did a while ago, but I probably forgot.
Yeah. Well, I know those are mine, and responsibility is also one, which is a dual-edged sword, because in my past companies where I wasn't CEO, I would get a new project, I'd get it done. And then, because I have if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. That's my German background. And so I would just keep getting more and more and more, because give it to Gabi, it'll get done. Yeah. And so, I think it'd be curious to see if a lot of entrepreneurs are like that.
I know for me in corporate, I always thought outside of the box. I did not like the status quo. I always thought everything could be improved and better.
Yeah.
And one of my previous boss, he says, Wes, because I made good money, I was working from home, and the company was awesome. And he says, Wes, why can't you just be happy? And I says, there's something missing.
Yeah.
And I'd rather get thrown into a lion's den, which I did, and I enjoyed it. And to be honest with you, I would do it again. It was 5 years. But I enjoyed it because I felt I was making an impact and making change. And that was important to me than a job that was going well. I needed to do more. I needed to make a change. I needed to make more impact. I needed to feel that what I was doing wasn't just what everybody else was doing, I guess.
Yeah.